Hey family. Red and Micah here. Wanted to come on here and our Rooted in Love series. We are currently on vacation, but we wanted to check in and Red had a topic he wanted to talk about. So we're gonna talk about it. So what do you want to talk about?
Uh, well, I'm sitting here thinking like with this ocean and water, it gives you so much like a sense of peace, healing, and just kind of remind you of when things are joyous. You know, that's a word.
You said it joyous. Come on.
um, because we think about joy. I think joy is something that's forever. Um, the feeling of joy is something that is forever as long as you are in existence, right? Unlike pain, I think pain fades away.
Okay.
So I think about healing, I think about pain that is fading away. When I think about joy, I think about something that can remain forever, um, as long as your existence is around. When you look back on your childhood years, some happy times, those good memories,
Mm-hmm.
to me, those moments they bring joy.
Okay.
Um, and when I think about the time when there were pain, over time that pain fades away.
Okay. Does the pain fade away or do you tuck it away?
Either way, I think it can fade away because of healing. You can
Okay.
be healed from it. I think it fades away because naturally we take it and tuck it away.
So if I could say that differently in words that I can process, what I think I hear you saying is joy and pain, they both exist. Pain can be temporary if you heal yourself through it. Joy is constant, but you are in control of that. Is that what you're saying, or that's just how I heard it? Because for me, I
Yes.
think pain exists as long as you allow it, and it can exist without you knowing you're allowing it, right? Like you could experience something painful in your life and in your mind tell yourself, I'm cool, I'm over it, it's nothing. But it shows up other ways. But you're not connected to it, so you don't know that it's the pain that happened however long ago that's surfacing today.
Well, that's what I mean by it fades away.
Okay.
You know, um, almost like if you get a scar on your leg
Mm-hmm.
and you uh, does nothing. I mean, you don't do anything about it,
Mm-hmm.
right? You don't do anything about the scar on your
Mm-hmm.
leg. It's painful when it occurred, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that pain fades away. The scar remains. The scar is a sign that there were once pain there.
Okay.
Um, and then that pain can show up somewhere else
Mm-hmm.
because if you don't get it properly taken care of, it can turn into something that can um, happen over time.
Okay.
But that pain itself fades away.
I got you.
Um, and I think, unlike joy, when something happens that brings so much joy in your life, you can always tap back to it and you can always connect with it and you can smile. It makes you smile, make you laugh. It takes you back to that moment, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and as long as you exist, meaning in your right mental state, you can always tap back to it, and it's going to still be that same joy.
So I hear you and I agree to a degree, because again, I feel like pain and joy are opposite ends of the same spectrum, meaning in the same way that you can recall a joyous moment and relive that moment and feel the joy in that moment, I feel like you can do the same thing with a painful moment. It's all in your perspective, right? Because there are people who thrive in misery, and it's man of shoulda, coulda, woulda, or I hate that this happened to me, or they can't get past the thing,
Right.
whatever the thing is. And I
Right.
would argue there was a time where I was in that space, right?
Right.
To your point, if they heal from it, then yes. But there are, in the same way that I can think about something joyous and happy and be pulled into that space, I can think of something miserable or painful and be pulled into that space also. But it's the healing that helps me transition from this painful thought into a joyous thought. Because at the end of the day, you're responsible for your own happiness and joy.
Right.
Like that's why they're like, can't nobody take your joy because it doesn't belong to anybody but you. You know what I mean?
Right.
So then let's talk about that. So
Well, let's
go
before
ahead.
you go there,
Yeah,
let's
yeah, yeah.
let's take a look at it this way, because you said, that pain it can be there,
Hmm.
it can be there, and but to an extent, do you think it fades, or does it feel exactly the same when it occurred?
I would say that it fades. I don't know that I would use the word that your pain fades. I think we numb it.
However it happened, but
I
does it?
think we numb it, and it's never. So think of, all right. So think about in the example that you gave with the scar,
Mhm.
right? You get a scar on your leg, and if you don't properly treat it, it could get infected and all of the things. In some cases, the scar needed surgery, but you put a band aid on it.
Okay.
And so for the moment, the band aid is serving its purpose. You don't feel the pain because you've covered up the scar. It's not exposed to the elements. You've covered it up, right?
Mhm.
And so you're walking through life. I'm thinking about Riley and all of his band-aids. When he don't see the cut, he's cool.
Mhm.
And so, but the minute you take that band-aid off and it's like, oh wait, this thing isn't healing.
Okay.
And then you feel the pain again because now you've exposed it to the elements. You've gotten in the shower or you got some mud or some dirt on it, right? Something happened that re-triggered that scar. So that's why I don't feel like it fades away. I feel like it's like we find ways to cover it up, the pain. We find ways to cover it up until at some point you're going to have to address it. Because if we're talking about the scar on your leg, the infection that got so bad, it's going to kill you or you got to kill it.
So what
Pain.
about joy? Like, can you numb the feeling of joy?
Can you numb? I don't think you can numb
I
the.
don't think you can either. I think
So I
I
say
think
that and then I say, I don't know.
I think once you have that feeling of joy, right,
Yeah.
you can always,
Go back to
even
it.
if you forget about that time
Yeah.
for a while, but the moment when you focus back on that time, it feel like that same joy is still there.
Okay.
Um,
So bring that into being rooted in love. How does this conversation connect to being rooted in love?
I believe, in every relationship, you gonna experience some joy and some
Okay.
pain, uh, and not like Porky Beverly and Maze, but
Shut up.
you gonna have some.
Joy and pain. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, you gonna have some sunshine and rain.
Facts. Sunshine right now.
Right, sunshine right now.
Come on, focus.
Yeah, yeah. No, I'm saying so. In relationships, you're gonna have some joy and some pain, right?
Hmm.
And if you think about this, I remember our first cruise. It was our 1 year
Hmm.
anniversary,
Hmm.
right? And we are on this cruise ship, and I'm thinking about that first year. That was my first time ever been on a cruise.
Okay.
Um, that was our 1 year anniversary, and when you think back, I think about the joy and it felt like it was just yesterday.
Got you.
You know what I mean?
Hmm.
But when we look over the years, when I look over the years in our relationship, there were some things that had happened that brought pain.
Hmm.
Um, and I don't. If I think back on those things, I don't feel that pain as I was in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't feel the same in the moment.
Got you.
It's a reminder. When I think about what happened, it's something that reminds me of how to move forward.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't feel that pain as I did in the moment when it happened. Unlike the
Mm-hmm.
joy, when I think about
Mm-hmm.
things that happened that was so joyful in a relationship, I can feel it. Like I can
Mm-hmm.
sit there and feel that same joy.
I can agree with that. I can agree with that. And I would add that for me, like you said, looking at the joyful moments and you can feel yourself in that moment. And then looking in those, remembering those painful times, I don't necessarily always feel myself in that painful moment. But I think it's because of the healing that has occurred, to your
Right,
point.
right.
So I would agree with you. But I think me personally, I don't know that I could look back on the painful times and not feel that pain had I not gone through my healing journey. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Like to just be like, okay, that happened, it's over, and I'm just going to deal with it. I don't think I could sit in this space and when I'm triggered or whatever, or I'm thinking about something,
hmm,
that I ain't going to go back to that place and be hot headed and upset and sad and all the things versus navigating and going through my healing process has helped me process those feelings so that they're not all just sitting in one space ready to bubble up.
yeah.
So I would agree with you.
I can remember when we were closer to the situation,
Mm-hmm.
and if anything triggered you and remind you and brought about that pain,
Mm-hmm.
your reaction is is much different than if that were occurred today.
Mm-hmm.
Like we can laugh about some things today,
Yes, we can,
but
because we don't
back closer to the
understand.
situation wasn't nothing funny. And like
Facts.
some people might say, too soon. Too soon. No, that's too soon. So
I agree.
that's the part I'm talking about
I
where
would
it
agree.
fades
Yeah.
because yeah, it was too soon for some things.
Yeah.
But nowadays we can look back and we can laugh at some things, and it's because of him.
And it's because, and
Um,
I think that's what I wanted to make sure we called out. Like, it doesn't just fade because it fades. Like, they say time heals all wounds. That's not entirely true.
okay,
You have, like, it's not just time, it's time and action
yeah,
heals all wounds, right? Because an example would be in the mess that we have dealt with in our 20 years, 20 plus years of relationship, just moving through time and not doing anything about those things would not heal the wound, right?
yeah.
It's time and action. You doing things differently, me doing some things differently, me getting therapy, you getting therapy individually. You
And
know what
that's
I'm
the key.
saying? So
That's
it's
the
like it's
key
not just time.
component right there.
Yeah.
You said it. We're doing something about it. Doing something about it
Yeah.
um, over a period of time or over time
Yeah.
creates that. Like you can't just sit back and don't do nothing about it and let time go by and say, "Well, time's going to heal things," but you did nothing within that time frame. You did
Yeah.
nothing to help
Right.
with the healing process. And you can't do it by force. Like you couldn't have forced me to get therapy or force me to uh, do things that you like,
I tried though.
but it doesn't help,
It
right?
did not.
It don't help.
It did not.
I gotta want it
I'm
myself.
like, bruh,
Yeah,
when
because
you
I think
gonna come where I'm at?
people they misunderstand that, and I'm gonna tell you something funny
Well,
too,
tell me.
because I heard some chatter
Oh,
uh,
chatter.
from a friend in the circle.
Mm-hmm.
When I mean I heard chatter, it didn't come directly
I
from me.
got you.
It was some chatter, in the
It was
background.
around.
And I believe they was questioning, like, um, the couples retreat, and probably even sitting down doing a video, almost like it's a Micah thing. This is a Micah thing, and I want to
No,
be
it's
clear
not.
for anybody who watching, because my whole purpose, like I shared with you before, my whole purpose of this is something like God put on my spirit to say, I didn't help you through this for no reason, what I mean, just because I'm just a gracious and good God. I just helped you through it, you know. I helped you through it
To
so
do
you can
something with it.
do something with it. You can do something with it.
Okay.
So what you gonna do with it? My creative brain, my creative side of things said, we always been wanting to do a couples retreat or just hanging out on some kicking it type stuff.
Right.
But since we'll do it, let's do a kicking it with a purpose.
Right.
You know what I mean? And then the idea of this, because I'm camera shy. I ain't trying to make it. But since I like doing fun videos and we having fun,
You do.
you know,
You the live bandit.
when we go live,
You gonna go
if
live every
we
chance you get.
FaceTime while we having fun, why not, do video when we have our serious conversations? Because we do that a lot. We
That's
sit
real.
at home and have our one-on-one. So I just believe if you're gonna do something, uh, doing something that you find just for fun for yourself, why not also do that same thing but put a little bit more purpose behind it? Put some purpose behind it.
That's
and you still be falling into the space of who you are, kind of what you like, things you like to do. So
I think it's funny, and I would be curious. I'm not asking you because I'm curious to know where the chatter came from. Because anybody that knows you knows that you ain't doing nothing you don't want to do. And that's why I don't understand why. Like, I've heard more than one time, like, oh yeah, Micah, he did it because of Micah. Like, if anybody that knows Daryl Abington / Red, Dirty Red, and whatever nickname you got, they know that you are not moving unless you want to move. And that's just what it is. Like, so that's confusing. But then it also says that whoever you are, they see me as dominant, perhaps. And I could see that.
I don't know, but I just think the only reason why it probably bothered me,
Yeah.
because I always wanted to, me, I always want to include my friends
And your stuff. Yeah.
I always want to always want to
Riley.
include them. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And also, if I'm gonna have a circle,
You want one. That's the one what you
I don't
want.
want to cut nobody out that's in the circle and have an opportunity to learn from each other, because
Right.
we all know iron sharpens iron.
Facts.
And I'm always open for my friends to share stuff with me. You know what I mean?
But that brings up another point. That brings up or goes back to what you said, in that you can't move until you're ready. Right. So, like how I was saying, I was
Exactly.
trying to get
The
you to
point.
go get therapy and make you
The
do
point.
all the things. Like, listen, I'm on this journey. This journey is dope. I know you need it. You should go get some too. And you was just like, nah, that ain't for me. So
Yeah.
in the same way that you had to navigate it and get to it when you were ready to get to it, whoever the chatter came from, it may be the same for them. Or maybe they don't feel like, you know what I'm saying? Because even when we was going through our mess, you didn't feel like you needed, like, I don't need therapy. I don't need help. I'm good.
I was
Right?
I was one of those ones who say definitely, like, I'm not gonna sit through no therapy and do none of that. I got that's an hour. There's a lot of things I need to be doing within that hour. I can be doing.
And that's what people do. I think people misunderstand therapy, whether it be individual or couples.
Right.
I'm not gonna say marriage, couples therapy, because if you are a couple and you're not married, you can still go to therapy to make sure this is what you're gonna do before you do it. But in saying that, I think people have a misunderstanding. Like, you feel like you got to be broken and therapy's gonna fix you. And I never experienced that way, and I don't see it that way. Right? To me, therapy exposes you to you so that you can really see who you are and then decide is this how I want to continue, or are there pieces and parts that I want to improve? Right? It's not about correcting or fixing, it's an improvement. To me, it was more about self awareness, because we grow up and we go through life like, this is just who I am. And it's like, but are you? Is this who you are, or is this how you are?
It's who you became.
It's who you
But you
became, but
can
more
become
importantly,
somebody
it's
better.
how you show up because of all of the places and things that you had to
The
navigate, right?
influences, right?
You think about it. If you're a kid that got bullied, you might show up on some, oh yeah, but that don't happen again. So now you walking through life tough, but on the interior, you really just want to be loved and all the things, but you ready for the smoke. You know what I'm saying?
It's funny because it's a rap song.
What's the rap song say, babe? Because you gonna talk to us
This
in
is how they
parables.
made me. It's by Fabulous. We're talking about this is how they made me. You know, talking about the folks that he came across
Yeah.
through his pathway to be who he is today, and he explaining, you know, why he this way versus that way because somebody said something or did something, he experienced something, and like this is how you made me. But but when you think about that, going back to what we were talking about, being ready, right, healing. Um, it's the same connection when you're talking about on the spirituality thing.
Mm-hmm.
I can come and share, you know, what God has done in my life.
Mm-hmm.
I can't force you to follow that pathway,
True.
but it's just for me to share it with you. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I sow the seed. I sow the seed and let God do what He does to it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that's the same thing with therapy and friends,
Mm-hmm.
and what we're doing, you know, because we discovered something, or I discovered something for myself. Saying for you, I'm gonna share it, and if you take it, it'll be a blessing to you.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't, you know,
That's on you.
I did
I
my
did my
part
part.
by sharing it with you, right?
Yeah.
And I feel good about that. Just sharing it with you, because you can't force nobody. Like we said, you can't force anyone to do something they don't want to do, and it wouldn't be helpful anyway.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they gotta want to do it for themselves. We talked about that in the barber shop one day. We were talking about folks going to church and but they still in the streets. You know, they might pull up in the parking lot and may have like drugs in their car because they're gonna make a move as soon as they leave church, which is not a smart thing because if you about to make a move, you know, you don't go grab your stash until it's time to pass it on.
Babe, we ain't coaching no
Yeah,
more.
yeah, I'm just saying. But anyway, but I was telling uh, the guys, I'm like, you know, if God is on your heart in the middle of a transaction and he stopped you and you pull up to the church, he's trying to tell you something.
Mm-hmm.
And you may catch it, you may not, but he trying to tell you something. I'm not I wouldn't tell anybody you don't belong in church.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't tell anyone that don't go to church because you're doing X, Y, and Z. That's what you should be doing because you're doing X, Y, and Z.
Mm-hmm.
Because in hopes that something will touch you that will change your life.
Mm-hmm.
And some people think that you actually have to get yourself together
Before
and start going to church. But that's God's job. His job is to change you, you know, save you, um, provide deliverance. So that's where you're going to get that help from. It's up to someone else to influence you if you're not familiar or aware of.
mm-hmm.
There's a higher calling or a purpose on your life, and that there are higher powers, whatever way you believe,
Mm-hmm.
that can help you to achieve that. And that same thing in relationships.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if we don't see anybody, if we don't see anybody looking happy in a relationship, a marriage,
Mm-hmm.
why would we want to try it?
Mm-hmm.
You see what I'm saying? So having someone who been through some ups and downs, uh, some good days, some bad days, and they make it 20, 30, 40, 50 years, that's inspiring. And it's funny because when you ask an older person, well, how did you do it? And they say, just keep on going, keep on going, just keep on going. What I mean? It's funny, but no, it's a little
It's
bit more.
real.
It's more than that.
And I want to add, if you in an abusive relationship, this is not a promotion for you to just keep on going. Because if
No,
you in an abusive relationship, get out, go find help and get out. However, if you are in a situation where your good days outweigh your bad, I would definitely say that was part of the evaluation for me. It's like, yeah, we had some bad days, and I ain't gonna say it was only 2 or 3 bad days, right? But we have more good days than we have bad.
yeah,
And at the end of the day, what Tank say? I see something in you. I saw something. Like at the core of who you are. I knew who you were at the core of who you are. If that makes sense. Like I could see you deeper than people out that think they know you. Know you.
yeah,
Like I feel like I know you deeper than some of your bestest friends.
yeah,
And I think I saw that early on. But you did say something. I want to get us back to um, the comment about therapy. I remember when we were going through our mess, at one point we were in couples therapy together. And even during couples therapy, because you weren't ready in that span, you still were doing you, right?
absolutely,
Whatever that looked like.
right,
But I remember you saying something to me when it was like when we came full circle, and it was like, even though you weren't ready to change or do whatever it is you needed to do, you heard nuggets in those sessions, and it was like Pandora's box at that point had been open and you couldn't close it. Like
right,
what you had learned in a couple of those sessions is like, ooh, I can't unsee it, I can't unhear it. And I know I'm walking out of order and I'm not ready to step in line, if you will. But at the same time, stepping out of line and knowing what I know is now contradicting and I'm uncomfortable.
right,
Is what you said. Something to that effect. Whereas like once Pandora's box was open, you couldn't close it. You couldn't put the stuff back in because it's like, dang, this therapist done said some stuff. And now I know different, but I'm still doing the same thing, even though I know different.
right.
And that was interesting because I was mad because even though you heard it, you didn't move even still in that moment. But what she said sat with you until you were ready to make the shift.
Yeah, I think when that happened, people are having a personal experience.
Mm.
It's almost like someone going to church and they sitting there and they starting to feel,
Sweating.
yeah, starting to feel convicted
Mm.
of the things they've been doing from a spiritual standpoint. God is communicating with you spiritually, um, and the Holy Spirit is making you feel convicted of some things. So going back to a personal experience, um, when this is not a spiritual experience, but just a personal experience, when you was taught, right from wrong, um, and you have some common sense and some sense of, you know, how to treat people versus not to, you feel some conviction when you do people wrong,
Mm.
especially if you have any kind of heart. And I shared that with you before in the midst of doing um, dirt or things that's unpleasing in a marriage. It was some time I struggled to look at myself in the mirror.
Mm.
And that had nothing to do with any conversations or anything that we had or in therapy. I wasn't even in therapy
Mm-hmm.
at the time. It was just the fact that living these multiple lives or living one way versus this way, you got the
Housekeeping, while you stay there, is it okay for me to set this in your room?
yeah. All right, thank you. It's just the fact that
Housekeeping. Sorry.
if you got the the good wolf on this side and the bad wolf on this side, and whichever wolf you're feeding is the one gonna win the battle. The old Indian folk tale.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm feeding this one and this one over here suffering and hurting, I'm looking at it like I'm hurting this one on this side, and vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that personal experience um, is something that help folks to be better and become better if you choose to listen to it and allow that thing to give you that wisdom and put you in your proper place.
Mm-hmm.
But then, you know, if I'm choosing to feed in the bad side, then I'm getting pulled to this side more and more.
Mm-hmm.
So now I'm just going through the routines, and that's where that personal experience is starting to tell you there's something wrong with me.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And it's a matter if you listen to it or not. I think most
Mm-hmm.
people have those experiences, but they choose not to listen to themselves. Like listen to your heart.
Your heart, your
If
gut,
you're not
your
going to listen to your
intuition.
spirit, if you don't have no spiritual connection with God, you can't hear God speaking to you. You can listen to your heart because you have that connection.
And you
Your
feel it.
soul. You
feel it in your
You
body
feel
when
it.
you're about to do something wrong.
You know it's wrong.
I mean, like you can think back to your childhood and think about like, well, I remember that one time I went with my friends.
Yeah.
I wasn't supposed to go.
Yeah, I wasn't supposed
before
to.
you even said yes to your friends, you felt something in your shanana.
Yeah.
And you still was like, it's fine. I'm going to go. I'm just nervous. But
Yeah.
you knew. You know what I mean?
I think for me, that pain started to really dig in deep once I started hearing those seeds that has been sold into me, which were listening on therapy at times, the times I did sit in, and those nuggets stuck in my head, or even some things my parents may have told me that now they started to make sense, or something I might have witnessed, and then now I'm like, okay, I'm familiar with that. I heard that before. Now that's starting to make sense. Now you got all this stuff that's helping you. These are your tools to be successful, in life,
Keep talking.
So now I'm starting to listen to these things
Keep going.
and doing the opposite. I'm starting to, feel like I'm going against the grain, So I think once I got to the point where I wanted a better life, those things really, it's funny because in one side of my head, I'm telling myself, I want to be better, but my actions don't show it. I keep telling myself, because I'm telling myself that, now these things are starting to creep up in my head more and more and more. And that's how you make a decision to make a change.
What you tell yourself becomes your truth.
You got to start listening to yourself. And then you got to make a step. Because you don't make a step, now you live that life of confusion and conflict in your head. But you got to make a decision. It's almost like somebody who's an addict.
So how do you make that step though? So for you, okay, so we're walking this walk, and I know these conversations, it feels like in this relationship it's just you, but both of us have created some space at some point, right?
Yeah.
We'll get to my stuff later. But for you, when you're living this life where what you're saying doesn't match what you're doing, right? And you're telling yourself, I want different, but I'm not doing different. How do you get from that duality into taking the step to do something different so that what you're doing matches what you're saying? Does that make sense? I want something different. That's what I'm telling myself, but I'm not doing the things I need to do to get something different. How do you make the step to match those up?
For me, it took something traumatic to happen in my life. I experienced on another level too. When I got locked up, I had a spiritual experience, and it took something to get your attention.
Because you're hard-headed, basically.
Yeah, when you're hard-headed like me, that's why people always say, why people go to jail, they find God. No, you go to jail and God find you because he set you down. You sit down long enough where
for him to hear you. For you to hear him, rather.
You're sitting still long enough. Less distractions. So going back to when I made that decision, you know what? I'm gonna go to therapy. I'm gonna take this serious because something really is wrong with me. I want to do better, but I can't do better. I'm like, I can't get right. You know what I mean? I'm like, can't get right, but I want to get right. You know, so that experience sat me down long enough. I had a bunch of quiet time because that situation caused me to be in some places to sit by myself quietly. And while I was sitting still, um, reflecting on life, reflecting on what I'm doing, reflecting on everything, you know, that balance scale started to go like this. It was like a whole bunch on this side and nothing over here. You know what I mean? And then I'm starting looking at everything, past experiences, like decision
Past
making,
relationships and-
choices,
Yeah.
relationship, friendship, everything. Like, man, it was an eye opener. That's what people mean by an eye opener. Like your eyes are open up wider, and you can see
You see everything.
you see everything, right?
So
And
time out. So when you say you were looking at the past, you saw that how you were showing up in this space was a
Exactly.
constant throughout your life span.
Exactly.
Is that what you're saying?
Yep, I
Got
saw
it.
the patterns.
Got it.
I saw the patterns. Well, I did the same stuff in this marriage I did in this marriage, or you know, I'm saying in my head I'm doing something different, but when you look back,
It's really the same.
it's really the same. You know what I mean? Just maneuvering. You know, it's 2025, but just because the year changed don't mean the things I'm doing change.
Doing them different.
Yeah.
You're doing the same thing. You just doing it
Doing the
different.
same thing, just add a little something to it. You
Or
know,
call it something different
Call it
so it
something
sounds
different.
better.
you know,
Interesting.
it's like you eating some wings, but you ain't eating it with ranch no more. You eating it with blue cheese, but you're still eating the wings. You know what I mean? So
they baked instead of fried.
yeah.
Got it.
Yeah. So you have to have I feel like this. Everybody need a lot of time to themselves. You need some quiet time to yourself. And don't wait till something traumatic happens. We need to create that. That's it. We need to create quiet time for ourselves. Just like praying warriors or spiritual folks want to have their
Prayer closet.
prayer closet. If you're not spiritual, and you want to,
It could just be a walk.
it could be a walk.
With
Personal
no
time.
music, just by yourself.
You know what? This crazy. We said no music. So when I had some car service and my battery somehow messed up the radio, and the radio didn't play no more, so I was forced to drive the car with no sounds for some time. I said, you know what? I'm gonna leave it like this.
I remember that.
I'm
That
gonna
actually
leave it.
happened during
Yeah,
the mess.
yeah. I'm gonna leave it just like this because riding in quiet time. I mean, riding in places and spaces in quiet time and no distractions. Starting to reflect on your life, you will start to see some things.
That's interesting. So we said a lot. We went a lot of places. We started off in joy and pain. We ended up in therapy and quiet time. But the connection to rooted in love is what? With all that we've talked about, how does that connect you back to rooted in love?
Individually, you both have to reflect on your lives. How am I living today? How was I living yesterday? And